Continuing along with our little photo album application, our server.js is getting a little out of control. We're doing a lot of different things here, and you'll see we're up to a few hundred lines of code. And we'd really like to sort of try to keep it simple and factorize our code and move big chunks of functionality into their own file. So we're going to do that by writing some very, very simple modules. And here is something where exactly how you do this is going to depend a little bit on your personal style and sort of what you're comfortable with doing, what you're comfortable with in Node and how you like to put things together. Some people might choose to create proper modules with their own package.json. Some people might choose to just create little files and put them in the same folder. I've kind of gravitated towards a model where I'll actually create a little folder called handlers, for incoming URL request or route handlers. I'll create a folder called data to sort of handle my backend model database and sort of caching functions and everything. So again, exactly how this is done is up to your own preference and everything. But in general, it is going to be pretty necessary to start splitting things out into separate files pretty early on. So I'll create a directory here called handlers, and you'll see that there. And now what I want to do is I first want to split out this album functionality because there's just a lot of code for that. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create in the handlers photo, I'm going to create a file called albums.js, and I'll say this is version 0.1 of that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm going to copy over these functions that handle that functionality, the handle load albums, the load album list, the handle get album, and the load album function. And I'm going to move those into albums.js. Now, since it's a module, these need to be surfaced on the exports like that. And this is just a helper function, so it actually doesn't need to be exposed from the module. And then similarly, this is one that we want to expose. So let's put that here off the exports objects. Now, this is also an opportunity to sort of give it a better name. We already know that this is going to be called albums, and so you're going to call this by saying albums.something. So let's call it albums.listAlbums, and then this one can be album.getSpecificAlbum or something like that. Okay, so now we can go here back to our server file, and all we have to do is update the routes here. So we need to first require that module like this. Oopsie. We can say album manager or album handler, let's call it, equals require handlers albums.js like that. Again, since I'm not using npm for these things, I actually do have to specify a specific path. All right. So now I should be able to say album handler like that. That's actually kind of not. How about like that? HDLR. That sounds better. Album handler.list albums, and then similarly this can be album handler.get specific album like that. Now that should be all I have to do to make this stuff work with some basic factoring. So I'll say node server, and I totally did that wrong because I said album name, not album handler, like that. All right, so let's verify that everything is still working. I should still be able to get things. I should still be able to get JSON data, and we'll see I made a little mistake. So here in my albums.js, since I'm using fs, I need to remember to fs equals require fs like that. And now, do I need fs in this one still? Yes, I still do fs, so I can't get rid of that just yet. So let's restart our server. And now that works fine. I can also just say albums.json, and oopsie, I should also be able to get pages home. So now I come back to my web browser, and I should be able to go localhost 8080, and pages home. And that still works great. Okay, so the other thing I want to do now is, you'll see here I have a lot of code. I'm doing write the headers, write the response, write the headers, write the response. It'd be neat if I could clean that up and make it a little more elegant. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a little file here called helpers.js. And this is going to be pretty stable, so I'll call it 0.5. And now what I want to do is I'm going to expose two functions. I send a lot of failure responses, and I send some success responses. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to say exports.sendFailure equals function, and what this needs to take is it needs to take a HTTP response code and an error object. So let's say HTTP code and error like that, and I also need to pass it a response so that I can actually write to the response object. So what I first need to do is get the code off the error object. Now some error objects will have a code and other ones will not. So I'm going to be a little flexible here. And that is, if I have an error code, I'll use that. Otherwise, I'll do error.name because they definitely all have that. Now I can say res.writeHead. I want to write the HTTP code, and then content type application JSON like that. And then I can say res.end JSON.stringify, and then I want to say error, which has got that code, and then message, which has got the message, which all errors definitely have. And then to be nice, I'm going to make sure there's a new line. Okay. Similarly, I'm going to write a send success function. So send success equals function. I need a response object and the data, the JSON data, or the sort of JavaScript object to write to that. So this is pretty easy. I'm just going to say res.writeHead 200, and let's save ourselves some typing, and then res.end JSON.stringify, and then again I want to have error null, and then the data they pass to us is that data object, and then I want to add a new line to make it look nice. Okay, now I can go back here and I can now say helpers equals require helpers.js, and that should let me clean things up a bit. So now I should be able to say helpers.sendFailure 503 and error, and also the response object. So it's the response, the HTTP code, and the error. And that is definitely going to clean things up. And then I can say helpers.sendSuccess response, and then I just want to say like that. So I'm already cleaning things up quite a lot. So similarly here, helpers.sendFailure response 503 error. And indeed, in future versions of this, we can even make our helpers code sort of determine the actual HTTP response code based on the error object you pass for us. So we'll do that at some other time. And then here, helpers.sendSuccess, and that's the response object, and we want to just send this, which is that. Great. All right. So we've already cleaned things up. We sort of got a system now for creating some helpful utilities that we can work with. So let's check it out and see if we've made any mistakes along the way. Let's get some files. It's always good. So actually what I'll do, and I'll talk about this in a much later on lesson, is you actually can create some sort of test suites to sort of make sure that you're not breaking anything and everything's working fine. But it looks like now we've done some factorization. We've got some nice helpers. So let's go back here to server. And what I'd like to do is I'd actually like to create a helper for pages too. So I'm trying to get all sort of handling functions out of this server.js and have it just sort of be my main routing point or sort of top-level application setup. So we'll first sort of indicate that we're going to create a pages file in the handlers folder, and we'll call that the page handler. And so we should be able to just update the route with page handler.serve page like that. And now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to get rid of this function, the serve page function, and let's save that. And then in handlers, I'm going to create a new file called pages.js. And we'll say exports.version equals 0.1.0 and exports dot And then here, serve page equals function like that. Now you see I do use fs here, so var fs equals require fs, and I definitely also use my helpers. No, I'm actually not using my helpers, so I don't need to include that just now. I can't use the helpers here because instead of outputting JSON, now I'm actually sort of outputting text and HTML and everything. So if I was going to start doing this a lot and I had a lot of code in this file, I might want to factor those out and put them in helpers as well. But for now, I don't actually need to do that. So that's with pages. It has fs. It has everything it needs. And I require the pages handler here. And my pages route is updated to work with that new serve page function like that. So you'll now see that all I have left here in my file are some functions to handle the serving of static content. And we'll look at how to get rid of those in another part. So again, let's come back here, check things out. Let's just try pages home, and great, that still works. Here in the browser, it all works just fine. So that's the sort of basic idea of how I go about factorizing my code. I definitely know some people have different strategies, different ways of doing it. They don't like the subfolders very much. There's a million different possibilities, and it's one of the things I love about Node. You can develop your own style. Your projects can have their own personality, and you should definitely feel free to come up with a sort of consistent model that makes you happy and sort of helps you maintain your code as works best for you.